These are the things that helped me the most so far with anxiety and worrying. The first thing is realizing that it's all in your imagination. Your anxiety only exists in your imagination and thoughts. It exists because of your imagination and thoughts. As Seneca said, that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. He also said something like, we suffer more before it is necessary. We suffer more than necessary before it is necessary. Something like that. The same idea. That we are anxious. We are worrying about something happening in the future. But that doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There is only this present moment. And we are anxious because we don't want something to happen in the future. And just think about how insane this thing is, that we are suffering because of something that doesn't even exist. And the main reason for our suffering is because we want it to turn out some way. We want it to be our way. And if it's not, then we suffer. We are anxious. That's why we're anxious, because we want it this way. And we're afraid that it's not going to be this way, it's going to be that way. So it's all our expectations and desires where our suffering and anxiety comes from. So you can really change your expectations or desires. If you accept everything as it comes, the Stoic idea of amor fati, a love of fate, accepting fate and even loving it, then you won't be that much anxious. The title was a clickbait, to be honest. Like, I don't think that you can just get rid of anxiety, because anxiety needs to exist. Like, let me explain. Anxiety needs to exist, because if it wouldn't exist, you wouldn't know what not anxious would be. If you didn't know what it would be like to be anxious, how would you know what it would be like to not be anxious? So you can't really get rid of it. But if you come to accept things as they come, accept them as they are, that can help a lot. And also just the thought that no amount of anxiety will change anything. Really. It doesn't matter if you're super anxious about something or you're not even anxious at all. It won't change a thing. So it's also good to keep in mind that anxiety is useless. Now, of course, if you're anxious, if I tell you that there's no reason to be anxious, like it's completely useless, it probably won't help a lot, but it helps to keep this in mind. That, for example, if you're worrying about an exam or a big test that's coming up, being anxious about it won't do a thing. No amount of anxiety about that test will change how well that test is going to go for you. It might even make it worse. And you are only anxious, you're only worrying in your thoughts. Like, the test hasn't even come yet, and you're already suffering because of it. You don't even know what's going to happen on that test. You might even die before that test, and you're already worrying, anxious about what's going to happen. What if I fail? And to be honest, the worst case scenarios that you make up in your mind, 99% of the time they never come true. And what if you fail your test? It's not the end of the world. You gotta come to accept things as they are, which is hard. It is hard. Like, I still can't just accept things as they come. It's a hard skill to learn. And before we go on to the next section, I just want to leave you with this very interesting idea that we are anxious because we want something to turn out our way, and we're anxious that it's not going to turn out how we want it to turn out. But imagine if everything turned out as you wanted it to be. Things would become very boring. Imagine if everything happened as you wanted it to be. It would be boring. If all the time you passed that test, you succeeded at everything that you wanted, it will become boring. What we need is a surprise. Something that we don't know what's going to happen. So you can look at it kind of from this perspective too, that not knowing what's going to happen is the best that you can have. Because if you had everything the way that you wanted it to be, it would become terribly boring. Now, the next thing that helped me is to focus only on what's in my control. To focus only on what's in your control. Because a lot of things are not in your control. Like other people's opinions about you, about other things are not in your control. The weather is not in your control. The outcome of something is ultimately not in your control. What others do is not in your control. A lot of things are not in your control. What you will get on the test is not in your control. But we put a lot of attention and focus on the things that we don't control, which is kind of stupid. We worry so much about other people's opinions, but we don't control that. If we overvalue other people's opinions, we put our happiness in their hands. We don't control it. Our happiness is now out of our hands. They control it. If they think good about us, then I'm happy. If they don't think good about me, then I'm not. So we should really only put our attention to the things that we can control. If you were to only focus on what you can control, like I guarantee you, you wouldn't be needing to watch any of these videos, these self-improvement videos. Like that is such an important lesson, to only focus on what you can control. And what can you control? You do control your opinions about something. You do control what you do, your actions. You do control what you say. You do control what you think. And you do control how you respond to something. Now it's very interesting because you don't control the thing that you're anxious about. You don't have control over what's going to happen in the future. But what you do have control over is how will you respond to that anxiety? How will you respond to that thing that you're anxious about? Will you respond by being even more anxious? Will you respond with worrying? Will you respond with hiding away, with running from it? Or will you respond with calmness or this kind of cockiness that, come on, bring it on, I can take it? You always control how you respond to a situation. Never forget that. You do control how you respond to anxiety, how you respond to any kind of situation. It's in your control. You have to be more conscious of it. You have to make use of this gap between a stimuli and your action. Because there is a gap between that, where you decide how you will react to something. And you do have control over that. So always ask yourself, what is in my control? Now you might have noticed that what we control is always in the present moment. What we control is always what we can do right now. Which brings us to the next point, is to be present. Be here and now. The key to a good life is to completely just be here and now. I'm not joking. To just be present and conscious and aware. There is a Zen saying that when you sit, sit, and when you eat, eat. And a lot of people are not doing that. You might be saying that like the fuck, when I'm eating, I'm eating. When I'm sitting, I'm sitting. But are you really? When you're eating, are you really eating? Or are you looking at some YouTube video whilst you're eating? Are you talking with colleagues about work whilst you're eating? Or when you're just sitting, are you thinking about what you'll do tomorrow? Or are you just there, sitting? And that's the whole entirety of your existence. You are just here, right now, sitting or eating. And in all of these situations, when you're eating and think about something, watching YouTube, you are unconscious. You're unconscious of the task at hand. Your attention is taken away. You're lost in the world of your thoughts. When was the last time you were actually fully present and here when you were eating something? When you are totally immersed in the experience of eating. Where you feel the taste of food on every taste bud. Where you're like really conscious of the taste of it, how it feels, how it goes down your throat. Being grateful for all the people that worked so that that food can be in front of you right now. How it grew from the ground, and now it's on your plate. Just being here right now, breathing fully. When was the last time you did that? Like, you probably can't even remember, because every time we eat something, we're always watching a YouTube video or talking with someone else. But when was the last time when you ate something? You just ate. You didn't do anything else. When you talk with someone, you just talk with them. When you just sit, you're just sitting. And you gotta realize that in this moment, the experience is all there is. There isn't something that is experiencing the experience different from the experience. There is no experiencer. Because in every moment, you are conscious of an experience or an emotion or a feeling. Every time you feel this sense of self, you're only being conscious or aware of a feeling or an experience. Your muscles tensing, hot or cold. But you are never aware of an experiencer. You're never aware, you don't never feel the one that feels the feelings. You don't experience an experience. Just in the same way, you don't hear hearing or smell smelling or see seeing. There is no experiencing experience or feeling feelings. That doesn't exist. There is not a separate self or thing that is coming to face with the experience. Somehow they met. There is no separate self from the experience. There is only the experience. Trying to find the experiencer, like the self, what I call the self, is like trying to see your own eye, or cutting a knife with the knife you're trying to cut with. A knife doesn't cut itself. Just in the same way, fire doesn't burn itself. You can't see yourself. Experience the experiencer, be conscious of consciousness. That it doesn't work like that. You can't see yourself with your own eyes. You can't see your eyes with your own eyes. But what's interesting is that when we are happy, we are totally happy, we forget the past and the future. We are so absorbed in the present moment. It's kind of like we lose ourselves, or we forget ourselves. When we are so absorbed in the happiness, we're just fully living it. And when you're happy, you don't say to yourself that I am happy, this is happiness. You're so absorbed in the experience of happiness that you don't even think. When you don't think, you don't compare things. It's almost like you became one with the experience. You only begin to separate yourself when it starts going down, the happiness starts going down, or you remember that this will end, this happiness will end, the birthday will end, or whatever. That is only when you will start separating yourself from the experience. And as we said, when you're happy, you're not saying that I am happy, because to say that is, words are basically based on comparison. To say that I am happy, you are comparing your experience with another experience. But in reality, these comparisons doesn't really exist. Because to compare something with something else, you'd have to like switch between them. To compare happiness with sadness, you have to switch between the experience of happiness and sadness very fast. But you can't do that like authentically. You can't just snap your fingers and now you're happy, now you're sad. What you only can do is compare it with a memory of sadness or happiness, which is dead. Memory of something is not alive. It's dead, it's empty. The memory of happiness does not compare to the experience of happiness. Its memory is only a knowledge about something, but not a knowledge of the thing itself. So you gotta realize that whatever you're experiencing right now is all there is. You can't escape from your experience. It's like trying to bite your own teeth. Like shake the shadow of your hand off. You can't do that. You can't get away from your own experience. You gotta realize it. But when we're sad, when we're anxious, that's what we're trying to do. When we're sad or when we're anxious, we're trying to run away from it. We're trying to separate ourselves from it. But you gotta realize that you can't escape this present moment. You can't escape this present experience because that is all there is. So resisting it won't help you a thing. Resisting it will only amplify it. So knowing that you can't escape it, that resisting it is not a good option. The only thing that you have left is to be just as conscious of it, just as fully immersed in the sadness, in the anxiety, as if you were in happiness. As you are so totally conscious and present when you are happy. When you don't try to separate yourself from the experience. The only option that we have left is to face the anxiety, is to face the sadness and not run away from it. So what should you do? Remember, keep in mind that you can't escape this present moment. There is only this present moment. You can't escape this present experience. Always remember to take deep breaths. That is a great way to keep yourself grounded and in this present moment, is to take deep breaths. And remember that the more you push it away, the more you resist it, the more it's going to come back to you. The more you separate yourself from it, the more it's going to come back to you. Realize that you are your experience. There is no experiencer. You are your experience. You are your fear. You are anger. You are in this moment, whatever is happening. You are that. And paradoxically, how you deal with anxiety is by not resisting it, not trying to push it away, but by surrendering to it. By being totally present in the here and now. By fully accepting it. By living it fully, just as you are totally present when you are happy. Just in the same way, be totally present of your anxiousness, of your worrying, knowing that you cannot escape this present experience. I hope that you liked this video. I hope it was helpful for you. Now, if you have any other thoughts about anxiety, if you want to expand on my ideas, if you want to tell me that I'm wrong and this is all bullshit, please tell me in the comments. I'm very interested about your thoughts, what you think. And this will also help other people get a better understanding of everything. It will help the community for us to discuss things. So I hope that you liked this video. I hope that it was helpful for you. If you're interested, I'm doing free one-on-one calls. If you want any advice, if you have any questions, you can send me an email and we'll contact each other. So I hope that you liked this video. Have a great day and goodbye.